everybody, it's Nairi, and long time no see for a proper video anyway. The last one was about my adoption book, Adoption Treasures, which is on Amazon if you're interested. But today we're going to talk about adoption and autism. Okay, so I've got a major family update for you. So if you followed my channel for any length of time, you'll know that both of my sons, who are now teenagers, have their difficulties. We've gone through assessments for different things, and we've kind of pushed forward with those things, not so much because we want labels for them, but because we've wanted the support for them, and sometimes we found that's the only way to get it. So originally, I'm going to say it was around about 3-4 years ago, we went for an assessment for one of our sons because he was doing what I can only describe as lots of body tics and jerks. He was doing lots of repetitive behaviours. He'd have to do certain things at night. The door would have to be open a certain way. The covers on the bed would have to be straightened. He would move things around on the table. So his knife and fork had to be in a certain way. And you name it. Sorry, we've got the cat just to come in. You name it, and he was doing it. And to me, yes, those behaviours could be coming from somewhere else, but I was very concerned that we might be missing something. So we went for an assessment, and during that time, they looked at fetal alcohol syndrome, Tourette's, I think ADHD, autism, and I think there was one other thing, but I can't remember what that was. There was one other thing, 5 things. And their result after, we were there for about 4 hours, was that my son had developmental childhood trauma. Now, there was no surprise to that. Again, if you've looked on the channel, you'll see the history there, that there was huge neglect and need when the boys came in. So it wasn't massively shocking that they came out with that. I think the only thing at the time was not so much my husband, but I was convinced there might be more. And I had to sort of back down and accept that that was what it was. And this is one thing I want to say to you if you're an adopter, that if your instinct is crying out to you that something's not right, do keep pursuing and pushing. And it's really, really hard because I do have qualifications to boot with my name and things that give me experience and things like that, but I'm not a qualified psychologist, psychiatrist or social worker. So you can't really argue with the professionals that are qualified about what that result is, okay? And, you know, I'm not there to make trouble. I'm not there to push for a result that I want. And I wasn't there to push for an autism diagnosis. I just wanted to know how we needed to treat our son, how we needed to deal with these behaviours, and really wanted to get him the help for the future. That was always the thing in my husband and I's mind, that they're going to be men. Hopefully, God willing, they're going to be able to leave home and live independently. That is a big question still. But what can we put in place to help them to be able to do that? So that was the thinking behind it. So I took on a job, which in the end hasn't lasted for long because of my health, but I took on a job where part of that training was quite intense training on autistic people, autism, neurodivergence, whatever you prefer to call it. And we have had children with autism living in the house as well as foster carers. So we went through that training again, and I just came out of that training thinking, I am still sure. And I must admit that as he's got older, to me, it's become more obvious. And I don't think any of the rest of our family were massively surprised when he actually came out with another assessment and a diagnosis, which I'll get on to. So there's lots of things that he does which you could put in the bracket of developmental childhood trauma, or you could put in the bracket of an autistic person. And this is the issue with it. They cross over massively. Now, I'm going to put my neck on the line. Please do not come at me. I am not being accusatory, but I do think that many children could be missed different diagnoses, not just one for autism or neurodivergence, because of childhood trauma. Okay, because developmental childhood trauma brings out so many different behaviours and challenges that so many of our children have it, that I think then other diagnoses could well be being missed. All right, now that doesn't mean to say that if your child has certain things, you need to start getting all, you know, my child's got autism and blah, you know, because they may not have, okay? But I'm just saying that I don't think it's the answer to everything if they have trauma. It's the answer to a lot of things, but it's not the answer to everything. And as time went on, I was noticing more and more the obsessive interest was the main thing. So he would always be on one thing for many, many months and then probably come back to it. So there'd be like certain interests and he would want to know all the facts. So not the human element of it, but the facts, okay? So I won't go into what they are, but the facts of everything. And he would know that off by heart. I also noticed that when we're in social situations, when he was younger, he didn't cope with social situations at all. But now he's older, he does, but only if he can steer the conversation that way. So he'll just come out with a statement and say, how about we talk about blah, blah, blah. And we could be in the middle of talking about something completely different and he will try and move it that way. And he also tried to get particularly the men in the family, that because I've got birth family, I've got birth children that are grown up, to do what he wants them to do. And if that can't happen, he won't cope with that social situation. And he either tried to bring it to his knees, which is what he used to do when he was younger, but now he'll just take himself off to his bedroom. So it's not quite as volatile as it used to be. There are other things that are still very much there. So whatever he does in a day is a pattern, whether it's good or it's bad, that pattern remains. If we do something that he likes, he'll try to take it over into the next day and the next day. Just so many things. I mean, I could be here on this video for forever telling you the things that were just really speaking out to me that this was more. And again, don't come at me. Tim and I sold our business a number of years ago. We have a little bit of money there. And I just thought, what have I got to lose by paying for an assessment? Now, for a lot of you, that's not available to you. And I can only apologise from my heart that it isn't. And I don't want you to feel negative toward me. But we had it there. And I wanted to be absolutely sure that we hadn't missed anything. Because I could see that he's going to struggle with relationships, holding them down. He's going to struggle with employment. He struggles with maintaining friendships. He's better, but I could see that, you know, life was going to be a challenge for him. It is going to be a challenge for him. And whatever we can do to make that better, we're going to do. So anyway, I saw this place that does assessments and you have to pay for them. And before you pay for it, they screen. So they give you quite a solid questionnaire. Now, in this questionnaire was 10 times more than I was ever asked in the other assessment. I tried to give information over, but I was not asked in detail about the behaviours that happen every day. Whereas this assessment was like, everything was, yes, he does do that. Yes, he does do that. And he does this. You know, and I was like, every question I was asking was like, well, it's yes to all of it. But I've never been asked these things before, but they're obvious things. So off went the questionnaire and then they came back and said, great, yes, we can go forward with the assessment. However, based on your son's history, because I'll see in there I put what his history was, and the level of trauma and neglect, we've got to ask him more questions. So they did they did a phone call with me and they just really dug deep onto some of those issues first before they decided to go ahead. And then they decided to go ahead. So the way it worked was I had my interview, which was about 3 to 4 hours. And then my son was in another room and he had his, and they split his into 2 parts. So we did about an hour and a half and an hour and a half. Interestingly, he was definitely happy to have this assessment. He'd said to me before many times, I'm different, I think differently. And he was, when I actually said to him, this is what I was thinking of doing, he actually said, thank you, which told me a lot. That I just feel that he knew in his heart that he needed answers, and I certainly did. So anyway, we had the assessment, and then there's a little bit of waiting time, and then they came back to us and said, yes, your son does have autism, or he is autistic, and he also has cognitive issues, which I know anyway, and we've taken that into account. And he also has developmental trauma, and we've taken that into account. And taking his cognitive background and the background of abuse and his childhood trauma, we still believe there is more than enough evidence that he also has autism. Oh my goodness, I cannot tell you how emotional I felt. It was a bittersweet emotion, because it's like, I don't want him to have it, but I think it was just a relief, because I've just seen, I felt like I was going a little bit crazy, because I was just seeing it all the time. And having worked with it, and even having another foster child being in the house with it, it just seemed just so obvious to me, you know. And it just, I think my husband was unconvinced, but then he hasn't been around it as much as I have. But yeah, I felt like I was going a little bit crazy, that nobody was listening. So anyway, the moral of the story is not to create trouble. And I know for some of you, the private assessment isn't going to be possible, but my instinct was still right. And I just wish I'd challenged that. And I'm strong, like I'm on here talking to you guys, and you know, you get the odd hater on here. So I'm strong, but I wish I'd held out a little bit more. But the people that do the assessments, they're like very like, this is it, you know, no. And then the people that did this assessment were so different and so kind and understanding. And yeah, I just felt really relieved. And I still do feel really, really relieved. And when I told him, he was relieved as well. And Tim and I have started to see things differently, which is why I wish I'd fought earlier, because everything makes sense now. It kind of made sense if it was trauma. A lot of the violent rages and stuff like that, of course it made sense. But now, his inability to process information sometimes, his inability to understand where other people are coming from, his inability to understand why people don't understand him, inflexibility, just lots of it now, it all makes sense. So we're in danger now of almost giving in too much, you know. I mean, he is maturing, he is getting older. We do get rages, but before they were very, very difficult to handle. Whereas now he almost will say sorry when he's having a rage and have it. And he might target us, but he's almost like he knows what's happening to himself, so he can kind of control it a bit better. That might not carry on, I don't know. He's going through the last year of school, very, very hard for him. He's not academic, it's a challenge. But I think that, yeah, Tim's always been more patient than I have with him, because he's so aggressive, and that triggers me a lot as an adult who had a difficult childhood. It really triggers me when he starts raising his voice. But I feel like we're understanding him a lot better, and we've just got to be careful now that just because we know that he has neurodivergence, autism, whatever you want to call it, that we don't then just give in, because actually we know why it is that he doesn't want his peas touching his pasta. And we know that if we were to be very lenient, he would just eat rubbish all the time. He wouldn't eat anything with anything healthy in it. You know, we've got to still stick to our guns of what we set up and what we know to work. And I would say that in a way we can work a little bit therapeutically with him. So therapeutic parenting does work with him to a certain extent, but I'm going to say the difference with him is he has to have everything very black and white. So sometimes with therapeutic parenting, you can go into more emotional kind of murky depths when you're using PACE. I don't know how to say any better than that. But with him, you can be empathetic and you can use PACE, but you've also got to be extremely black and white. And those two things can sometimes be a little bit opposite. So it's a little bit more like, you know, peeling those onion layers back and trying to work out what you're dealing with. Are you dealing with the autistic part of him? Are you dealing with the trauma part of him? Are you just dealing with a teen who's in a bad mood and wants his own way? Are you dealing with the fact that cognitively he's not always there? You know, what are you dealing with? And sometimes you get it wrong. Sometimes you don't know. But I just feel like we've got enough information now to do the best we can for him later. And particularly as he's about to leave school, and go to college and then hopefully get a job, then people are going to need to understand the way he thinks, and that it's going to be different. And it's not always bad. Like, he can challenge you on something and you're like, wow, okay, better watch what I say. He said to me before, Mum, I don't think you should say that. Even though, may I say, some of the things he says are outrageous. But there's a lovely side to him, and the way he thinks differently can actually be very interesting and useful for us as adults as well. But one thing that is quite dangerous is he does suck in information if he's interested in it, and he will believe that information, which is extra vulnerabilities on top. And some of the stuff that is out there at the moment for teens is very, shall we say, extreme, you know, can be quite extreme use. And so we're having to watch that really, really carefully. So yeah, my advice to you is keep an eye on what they're doing, what they're watching, and just little hints of what they might be saying and what they're picking up on the internet. Because again, he likes to copy things, you know, he likes to hear something and then develop it as his own. I'll put it that way. So guys, again, thank you so much to my members. I'm sorry you've not had like a meaty video like this in a good while, but I did say on my last video I have been quite poorly. I've had pneumonia, and I'm a loads better, but I'm still really quite weak. I've also had this book on the background for a few years, which I wasn't brave enough to publish, so I've gone and published that. So I've done a few things, but you know, I think I'm back here for a bit, and it's just a case of finding what's interesting to you guys. If you're a new adopter, then some of this is maybe a little bit further on and a bit deeper for you. But I can't just churn out videos for the sake of it and go back and repeat everything. So it has to be new material for me, and this is new. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you the next time on Fly Little Birds. Thank you.